Hello everyone, welcome to this series on cultural studies, and in this video we are going to discuss African philosophy. Introduction. The term African philosophy reflects the tradition of naming philosophical practices based on cultural, ethnic, national and geographical origins. Examples include American, Jewish, British, German and French philosophy. According to Vincent Descamps, contemporary French philosophy encompasses discourses considered philosophical in France today. Similarly, African philosophy includes intellectual and discursive productions deemed philosophical by today's African public. However, this definition does not capture the historical, political and cultural complexities inherent in African philosophy as an academic tradition. Defining African philosophy. Expanding the term African beyond its geographical meaning raises questions about what constitutes African philosophical production. Should it be referred to as African philosophies due to the continent's diverse ethnic and cultural traditions? Does the African identity of a philosopher, regardless of their method or content, qualify their work as African philosophy? Debates on these questions have shaped contemporary discussions on African philosophy. Historical roots and scholarly approaches. Scholars like Chaik and Diop argue for the Egyptian origins of Western philosophy, suggesting ancient Egyptian philosophy and science represent the classical flourishing of African civilizations. Other scholars trace African philosophy through ancient and medieval Islamic North Africa, highlighting the role of Arab philosophers in transmitting Greek philosophy to Europe. Claude Sumner's work on Abyssinian philosophers and the resurgence of interest in William Amo's writings exemplify efforts to reconstruct Africa's philosophical heritage. Crisis and encounter with European modernity. The brutal encounter with European modernity, marked by slavery, colonialism, and racial superiority ideologies, drove the development of contemporary African philosophy. European Enlightenment thinkers like Hume, Kant, and Hegel depicted the African mind as inferior, a notion reinforced by anthropologists like Lévi-Breuil and Evans Pritchard. These perspectives justified colonialism and necessitated an understanding of African cultures for effective European civilizing missions. Father Placide Temple's and Bantu philosophy. Temple's book Bantu Philosophy aimed to teach colonialists about African ontological systems to aid their missionary work. The book's significance lies in its use of the term philosophy to describe African intellectual traditions, challenging the colonialist notion of African irrationality. The book's ambiguity allowed it to become a tool for African intellectuals to assert their philosophical heritage and humanity. Negritude and Harlem Renaissance. The discovery of African philosophy and the Harlem Renaissance, a movement led by African American intellectuals, gave rise to negritude. This literary and philosophical movement, initiated by African and Afro-Caribbean students in Paris, used Bantu philosophy and anthropological studies to assert the existence of African philosophy. Negritude promoted re-examinations of European theories about Africa and influenced contemporary African philosophical discourse. Ethnophilosophy and political ideological philosophy. Ethnophilosophy, inspired by Temple's, focuses on analyzing African worldviews to distill ontologies, ethics, metaphysics, and political theories. Key works include Alexis Kagame's La Philosophie Bantu, Rwandais des Lettres, and Barry Helen and J.O. Sodipo's Analytic Experiments in Yoruba Philosophy. The political ideological strand, led by figures like Kwame Nkrumah and Julius Nyerere, developed philosophies of African socialism and cultural authenticity, professional philosophers, and critiques of ethno-philosophy. A group of African philosophers trained in Western philosophy, including Pauline Hautonji, Odera Oruka, Kwasi Wiredu, and Peter Boudouin, emerged in opposition to ethno-philosophy. They argue that philosophy is a universal, scientific discipline and criticize ethno-philosophy for relying on communal, unwritten sources. Oruka's Sage Philosophy project attempts to address these critiques by highlighting individual African philosophers in the oral tradition. Deconstructive and hermeneutic trends. Modern African philosophy also includes deconstructive and hermeneutic approaches that challenge the exclusion of Africa from mainstream Western philosophy. Scholars like V.Y. Modimbe and Anthony Appiah reinterpret African colonial and post-colonial experiences, emphasizing the significance of race, gender, and cultural embeddedness in philosophical practice. This approach aligns with the concept of Africana philosophy, integrating African and Afro-American philosophical traditions. Conclusion: African philosophy encompasses diverse traditions and intellectual movements shaped by historical, cultural, and political contexts. From ancient Egyptian roots to contemporary deconstructive trends, African philosophy continues to evolve, challenging and enriching the global philosophical landscape. So this was the discussion on the term African philosophy. We will meet in the next video and discuss some other term. Until then, goodbye and thank you.